T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All three engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff.
Hey, citizens, this is show number 47. Go home, you're drunk. And just so you know, Eric and I have been working on doing more interviews for the show. We've gotten some excellent feedback on the show that we did with Pat McCarthy of the Giant Magellan Telescope Observatory Project. And I've had good feedback on some of the other interviews that we've done in the past. There's only been a few of them, but that seems to be a direction we could take the show that would maybe make it unique. We dig out researchers and scientists and engineers, people that build things and make things and study things and dig into and figure out what they know deep down inside those brains of theirs and talk about them on the show. So if that's interesting to you, hit us up. You could tweet at us at Citizens of Tech, post in the Citizens of Tech subreddit, and we'll dial up those people. And so far, we're batting 100%. Everyone that we have asked to interview has agreed to be interviewed by us. We've got a new interview that we'll be doing next week with the CEO of an electric vehicle company. Surprise, surprise, that'll be coming soon. I am Ethan Banks at EC Banks on Twitter, and Eric at Zutphin is, hey buddy, it's nice to see you over there. I see you're reading about 500 decibel sound waves.
Yeah, so I was reading an article from Huffington Post, actually, where they claim that 77% of ad blocking users feel guilty about blocking ads, right?
So I'm not in this. I must be in the 23%. Okay, go ahead.
No. Yeah, me too. Shameless. Yeah. But yeah, the article talks about, people feel guilty for blocking ads, and someone commented on it. I feel badly, but it's those auto-playing audio ads that blare out sound automatically at 500 decibels. Right? And so this guy, Deep Musing is his handle on Reddit. He says, I agree, but as an aside, the engineer in me just had to take a moment to try to fathom plus 500 decibels.
Okay.
He says the loudest sustainable sound wave in Earth's atmosphere at sea level is about 194 decibels, which would be a longitudinal wave with a compression of 2 atmospheres and a rarefaction of pure vacuum. A website playing music through your computer speakers at 194 decibels would be more intense than the Saturn V main engines firing at your face, and it would be clearly heard from a couple of thousand miles away.
You just said Saturn V rocket firing at your face.
Yeah, it gets better. Atmospheric sounds that are louder than 194 decibels are heavily distorted and are effectively shock waves. The most powerful known atmospheric shock wave in human history is the Tunguska event of 1908, which was caused by a meteoroid or comet fragment slamming into the atmosphere and exploding a few miles above Earth's surface. The 300 decibel shock wave hit the ground with the force of 5 million tons of TNT and leveled 770 square miles of forest. A 320 decibel shock wave has the destructive force of a 14 gigaton nuclear bomb, which would clear a crater about 12.4 miles in diameter and 1.33 miles deep. Again, just as a reminder, decibels are measured, it's logarithmic.
Yes.
So listening to a 365 decibel shockwave would exert a similar pressure on your head as laying back in your favorite chair and resting the moon on your face. Which is just such an apropos analogy. A 500 decibel shockwave has only been theorized in black holes and neutron star quakes and would vaporize your head, your house, your city, annihilate your country, ignite the atmosphere, flash boil the oceans, and probably shatter the continent that you're sitting on. That would be a very annoying pop-up ad.
And there's some advertiser wondering if they can do it, no doubt.
Yeah, that was the follow-up advertiser. So you're saying it's possible.
Oh, well, in other news of corporate evil, HP has made it so that for some of their printers, you can no longer use third-party ink.
At all. Like, they're not making it difficult. They're making it impossible.
And this was all done through software. Apparently, in March of 2016, there was a software update push to, OfficeJet, OfficeJet Pro, and OfficeJet Pro X printers. I actually have an OfficeJet Pro, And part of that was come September 13th, HP printers running that firmware are no longer going to accept third-party ink cartridges. They will look at them and see them as not valid. This is not. There's chips in these cartridges. These are fancy things. It's not just this mindless. There's actually a little bit of intelligence that's in these cartridges. You plug them in, and the HP system can tell if it is an HP branded cartridge or not.
Right, because this is big business, right?
It is huge business. Printer ink is expensive. This is why printers themselves tend to be so cheap relatively.
Yep.
The OfficeJet Pro printer that I have, Eric, I think it's a 8610 model. It does duplex printing. It is a scanner. It is a copier. It is a color printer. It's got a wireless interface in it. It can handle not quite a ream of paper, but a pretty darn big stack of paper. And like I said, duplex printing. I mean, this thing has got actually enough inside it that it'll print both sides of the piece of paper. I think it'll do faxing if I wanted to go back to the Stone Ages on my dinosaur. I think it will. And it's a very capable machine. It really is. Yeah. I think it cost me $120, something like that. Laughably small.
Right.
It prints quickly and all the rest. But ink, right? I mean, that's where they're making it up. You spend ink to put through this machine, and whatever breaking even or loss they might be taking on the printer is where they make up for it. In fact, ink is one of the most expensive liquids on the planet. And Eric, you and I looked up a bunch of different sources, but I was coming up with anywhere between $2,000 and $3,000 a gallon for printer ink.
Yeah.
For if you look at what a printer ink cartridge costs you versus the amount of ink that's actually in the thing,
it's more expensive than human blood.
Yes, right. By way of comparison, some of the stuff that was more expensive than printer ink was like snake venom. Certain kinds of snake venom were more expensive. Insulin is a little bit more expensive than printer ink. But right, more expensive than human blood by the gallon. It's crazy what printer ink costs. Now, so here's the thing. HP can do this with software, and we can look at it and go, well, that's kind of evil. It just sucks. Why can't I use third-party ink cartridges? And if I'm a third-party ink cartridge manufacturer, I'm going, all of a sudden my market just disappeared for putting these cartridges in.
Well, it sort of smacks of what Keurig did with the DRM thing on the K-Cups. Did you hear about this?
I remember this, yeah.
Where
this
they weren't going to allow
ago.
third-party K-Cups to be used in their brewers. And they actually backtracked some on that, but it doesn't sound like HP is going to.
I could find no indication that HP has changed anything. In fact, I looked for an official position that HP had on this whole thing because it's quite controversial. The Electronic Frontier Foundation has actually called on HP to back this change out or make it possible for owners of these printers to back the change out. But all I could find on HP's site, not that I looked, super diligently, but HP's websites are notorious for being difficult to navigate. As someone who's been in enterprise IT a lot, the HP websites are one of the ones like, oh gosh, I don't want to have to find it. Please don't make me do it. Please, it was like a punishment to have to go to the HP website. But anyway, I let Google do the work. And I did find a PDF, official HP PDF, that explains, they list 7 myths about non-HP cartridges. Myth 1, I'll just read them real quick here. Non-HP cartridges are just as reliable as original HP. Myth 2, non-HP cartridge page yields equal those of HP cartridges. Myth 3, inks perform just as well as original. Myth 4, the non-HP cartridges are better for the environment. Number 5, non-HP ink cartridges save you money. Myth 6, ink cartridge is simply a container holding colored water. And myth 7, ink dries out if you don't print on a regular basis. In other words, they're trying to go after all the reasons people look at third-party ink cartridges and use them instead of HP-branded ink cartridges and make it sound like that is faulty reasoning. You don't know the whole story. If you knew the whole story, you'd buy our far more expensive cartridges. And they are pricier. Now, I haven't done a recent purchase. So I can't tell you like exact numbers off the top of my head here, but I know that they've been historically definitely pricier.
Yeah.
So, okay. Now, all of this said, and while I'm down on HP for this, I will make one comment. Back in the day, I had an Epson printer, inkjet printer. I used third-party ink in it, and I was sorry because it clogged the ink print head.
Yeah.
Even cleaning it diligently, at the end of the day, I did end up ruining that Epson printhead and I did some homework on it and found out, the third-party ink quality was inferior to original Epson ink, and that can happen. These are very fine mechanisms that are used to squirt the ink onto the paper, and so that quality of the ink is a concern. And so, to be fair, I've been buying HP ink cartridges, and I don't print enough anymore that it really matters because dinosaurs. But
so much of what you do and I do is paperless.
And so, right. But for me, the big issue is HP's stance here. It just sucks.
Yeah. No, yeah. To remove all choice from the consumer is just, deplorable is the only word that comes to mind. It's like there are laptops that are part of some Microsoft certification program that you're going to be unable to install Linux on, and the EFF is having a canary over that as well. But it's the same idea, right? I purchased something that I have an intended use for, and now you're locking me out of doing what I want with my purchased good.
Network switches, optics, classic. If I am a Cisco switch, or I'm an Arista switch, or I'm whatever I am, you have to know some backdoor command to enable third-party optics, which are usually far cheaper. So you pop that optic in. If it's not a Cisco branded or Arista branded, whatever the appropriate vendor is, they'll say, unrecognized optic.
Yeah.
And it either won't pass traffic, or if you know the backdoor command, maybe it will pass traffic, but if support notices you've got it in there and you've got an issue with the box, they may choose to not support you. Say, well, you've got a third-party optic in there, and so therefore we're not going to support you on your issue, even if it's completely unrelated, which it always is, because usually the optics are manufactured by the same people.
Because, you only wanted to pay 25% of the of the cost of...
Well, it becomes such a big thing in networking that the optics are 50% or more of the total cost of purchase for like a data center class switch that is running all high-speed Ethernet. Mm-hmm. It's a big thing. So this is kind of endemic in the industry. You get them with the the low cost or the part you want, and then you kill them on the accessories. Just jack them. Dude, what's an Apple Watch band cost, right?
Yeah.
You've noticed $150 for an Apple Watch band?
Is it really?
Some of them are.
Wow.
The fancy leather ones, I've definitely seen stuff priced in that high. They're not all that much, but they're a lot.
Wow.
So same thing like this stupid GPS watch you're looking at on my wrist right here. The leather band on this thing, because I wanted to have a leather band for, when I go amongst nice people, it's like $60, which is obscene. It's lovely, but come on.
Little strap of leather.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's it's Garmin branded, and and there it is. That was the thing. Anyway, not that I had to buy this one necessarily. This is a little different thing. When we're talking about software and hardware and vendor lock-in through software, it's just dirty. So I'm glad the Electronic Frontier Foundation is getting involved in this. They've got a petition out there. Nearly 8,000 people have signed it. They're asking HP via this petition to restore the full functionality of the printers, which is a very interesting way to phrase it. In other words, you've taken functionality away. You've broken the printer is really the implication there.
Right.
Which is an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes perfect sense. If I owned an HP printer, which I have not for many years because I don't care for how they do business, I'd be thinking the same thing.
Look at you and your righteous high horse. Oh.
Well, Ethan, when you're someone of my stature and standing, I got nothing.
Right.
So, marching on into the next topic here, virtual machines as security. This comes to us via Ars Technica. This is about Microsoft working to keep you safer in their new browser, Edge. The only problem with that is you don't use Edge, do you?
I don't use Edge and I don't use Windows. But
right.
I mean, if I did use Windows, I'd be giving Edge a try. As I recall, it's a completely re-engineered browser from the old IE, and it's quite speedy. It's got a very speedy page rendering engine and so on.
It does do well, but statistically speaking, none of you out there use it as your primary browser.
Yet.
Yes.
Don't bet against Microsoft. They'll get some market share with this thing eventually.
They're currently at 4.2% market share, according to netmarketshare.com. And that sounds about right, because if you ask anyone, hey, what's your primary browser? They're going to say Chrome.
Yeah.
Right. or maybe IE 11 still, not Edge at this point,
or Opera.
or Opera. I'm a convert.
I
ever
know
since
you are.
a few episodes back. It's basically another Chrome with some cool features.
But okay, but what you're saying here is there is Edge. So Edge, okay, if we assume it's a vector for, or your web browsing in general, whether it's Edge or whatever it is a vector to be infected because you're out on the internet, browsing sites, something's got malware loaded, you inadvertently bring malware in. If my browser is running in its own virtual machine, it can't get out of the VM?
That's the idea. This isn't really, it's a novel idea and it isn't simultaneously, because it takes a page from the book of spin up a VM for your browsing of dubious safety. I've read many things out there. Oh, well, when I go to, sites to find information on, topic XYZ, whatever, I do it in a virtual machine because I don't want either the government, installing something on my computer or, the providers of these dubious downloads hijacking my browser, etc. It also takes a page from the book of Microsoft's Don't Name Anything in a Succinct and Meaningful Way, because they're naming this technology Windows Defender Application Guard for Microsoft Edge. Because that just rolls right off the tongue, right? So basically, this is a quote-unquote lightweight VM, and it's an extension of Windows 10's virtualization-based security. And
sounds more like a container to me.
That's exactly what I was thinking as I'm reading this. And nowhere in the article did they use the word container or Docker or anything like that. But Microsoft has been getting all hot and bothered about Docker lately.
They have.
So
yeah.
I wonder if that got the wheels spinning. Anyway, let's talk briefly about the current security methodology that a lot of browsers are using, which is sandboxing, right? You have every tab gets its own process, which is in theory isolated from other executable instances. So other tabs and other applications running on your system. And they have very limited interaction with the rest of the system's processes. And breaking out of that sandbox is the challenge, although it can be done. Like if you ever follow anything about Pwn to Own, right? Those hacking contests where it's like, what's the first browser to fall in the contest? Oh, it was Safari this year. It was Chrome that year. It was Firefox this year. And usually what they're exploiting is a breaking out of the sandbox that the process is in. And this leads to, privilege elevation and or remote code execution. And usually when you do this, it's actually you're breaking out using some exploit that's part of the operating system vulnerability. It's not necessarily the browser. There are weaknesses. Anyway, Application Guard takes this a step further with large portions of Edge running inside a stripped-down Windows VM.
So this is a step further than sandboxing.
Correct.
Got it. Okay,
Yep.
okay.
So it can't see other processes. It can't see your storage. It can't see the other applications installed on your system. And it cannot interact with the kernel, purportedly. So it should be much more secure. And like you said, this sounds very much like a container, right?
Running with namespaces. And
Yep. It only has the libraries and code required to make that particular application run. And then when it's time to update it, they just update that stuff in that container.
Or a unikernel.
Yeah, maybe.
Huh. Interesting.
They didn't mention anything in that regard. Like I said, they didn't even talk necessarily about containers.
Now I want to find a nerd at Microsoft who knows exactly how this works.
So what exactly is going on?
That's interesting.
This sounds pretty cool. The gotchas here are it's Windows 10 Enterprise only, which is the same deal as virtualization-based security.
Whoa. Okay. As in, I'm not running this version of Windows 10 at home.
Right. So you don't get it.
That's stupid because because who's got the least amount of protection possible?
Home users.
The home user.
Yep.
So where is the place I would want? Okay, so side story here. Brian Krebs on security, been following the DDoS going against his site.
Yep.
Now, it looks like they've coming out on the other side of this thing, but at peak loads from the reporting that I read, 600 gigabits per second were foisted upon this poor guy.
Yep.
And his site, and a lot of that traffic was originated with badly secured IoT stuff. and home systems, coming off of residential networks, as I understood it.
Yep.
So IoT was the one that got all the news because IoT is newsy. But the point being, wouldn't I want, if I'm Microsoft and I care about the world, to put this stuff onto home networks so that my home users aren't being exploited and my Windows 10 boxes aren't being used as part of a DDoS?
Yeah, you would think so.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
No. That's totally fair. And that's not the only issue. There are compatibility issues here because this actually requires virtualization extensions on your CPU. So, that's Intel VTX and AMD's virtualization, which is
somewhat common.
Yes, but there are a lot of systems out there that Windows 10 will run on, even Windows 10 Enterprise, in business, corporate world, that don't have those instructions because they're less expensive. So they buy those for, everyone else. The non-IT folks, I guess. And then there are performance issues because obviously there's overhead. It may be a quote-unquote very stripped-down VM, but it's still a VM, right? And on top of that, there's a virtualization layer there, which, if it's anything like virtualization-based security, it uses Hyper-V. So if you have Hyper-V installed and you're running VMs in Hyper-V, you can't really run VirtualBox or VMware's, virtualization platforms. So,
like Workstation or whatever.
Yeah, Workstation or Fusion, although you wouldn't be running Fusion with Edge. Anyway, there are issues with running multiple virtualization layers side by side. You really can't do it. So if you're using an existing virtualization product that is not Hyper-V, you're probably up the creek on this. So all of that aside, the idea is pretty cool. It's going to be available in late 2016, so any day now, really, on the insider builds of Windows 10. So if you have specifically signed up to be on the fast circle, or however they term it, that get the initial builds sooner than the general public, you should be seeing this, again, assuming you have Windows 10 Enterprise. And then the stable release is slated for sometime in 2017.
It's because most of the technologies they're using are known, or at least I would think that they are. I'm surprised it's taking that long. But who knows? Whatever.
The beta pool for it's going to be very small, I presume, because they're limiting it to enterprise, and the enterprise is not usually fast to adopt these kinds of things. So I don't know, the thought process there, but anyway.
Yeah, if they're trying to get enterprise, of course, they're going to take their time and do all the debugging. And, of course, it's Windows, which runs on all the things. And so they're going to do all the hardware concerns and like you said, performance and on and on and on before they finally commit to this thing.
Yep.
Well, boy, doesn't that just sound like a problem that alcohol could solve?
Makes you want to drink.
And speaking of which, drunk people, Eric, they do not know how drunk they are. So this article comes from Ars Technica. The story is a group of scientists went bar hopping through Cardiff over several nights, and they picked kind of a random sampling, every seventh person that they ran into, a series of questions trying to determine if the people who were out drinking and bar hopping and so on had an accurate sense of how drunk they were. Here's the questions that they asked. How drunk are you right now on a 1, totally sober, to 10, completely drunk scale? Question 2, how extreme has your drinking been tonight on a 1 to 10 scale? If you drank as much as you have tonight every week, how likely is it you would damage your health in the next 15 years on a 1 to 10 scale? And last question, if you drank as much as you have tonight every week, how likely is it you will get cirrhosis of the liver in the next 15 years? On a 1, definitely will not, to 10, definitely will scale. And so they would ask them these questions, they'd get their results, and then they would they'd measure their blood alcohol level.
Oh.
How drunk are you actually right now?
Okay.
They would figure that out. And then the whole idea was not to condemn the person for how much they drank or anything, just to see what their perception was of their drunkenness.
Sure.
This person that had been drinking. And what they found was that their perception of how drunk they were had far more to do with the people they were with as opposed to how drunk they really were. So if, Eric, you and I are drinking and you hadn't been drinking at all, you were completely sober, and I had been drinking a little bit, and so I was feeling tipsy, I would go, yeah, I'm really feeling it, because I'd be comparing myself to you completely sober. If, on the other hand, you and I had been out drinking and you were like, you blacked out. You fell right over and were done, and I hadn't yet. I'd be like, I'm not as drunk as him, so I'm fine.
I could probably drive.
No matter how much I actually had been drinking.
Wow.
So
that makes sense to me, because I think as social creatures, we compare our situation to the situations of others. And that's how we get context for the things that are happening to us and around us.
It's a relative scale.
Yep.
You're right. You measure yourself against those other people around you. And I think, the takeaway for me was, if you're a person who's out drinking, you actually don't really have a good sense of your situation. We all kind of know the stereotype of the drunk who's like, I'm fine. I can drive home. It'll be fine. And then if you go way back to the old comedian Sam Kinison, he had a routine, and he had a line of, "They can't take away our keys when we're drunk because we have to get our cars home." Stuff like that. The logic of a drunk person is bad. It can be very, very poor, and
fundamental, one of the fundamental effects.
And so, if you don't have a good sense of how drunk you are, you actually don't know how dumb the decisions are that you're about to make. So you have to have, it goes back to that designated driver person and so on. You've got to have someone in the group that is actually completely clear,
objectively
no alcohol,
able to make
fully and responsible, and that you trust to make the decisions for you when you've been drinking.
Yeah,
because you actually, it's beyond you. You can't do it. You can't do it. It's just the way it is. It's science.
You have impaired judgment, so therefore you can't judge how impaired you are.
So another little bit of a scientific miracle here. There is a 1 terabyte SDXC card announced by SanDisk. This was announced on September the 20th. It's not available yet that I could tell. I did a little shopping, seeing if I could get a price on this thing. Isn't there, but and the form factors, maybe some people are going like, SD cards, I don't know that I care. Fair enough. You might care more if it's a USB form factor or something like that, whatever it is that you're using for that convenient external storage. But SDX cards are handy for videographers, photographers. I've done starting to work on a little video because I'm going to be doing some video work for packet pushers, and shooting in 4K. That eats up the bytes, baby.
Yep.
It goes quick. So for those people that are out there shooting super high-res pictures and lots of them, or shooting in 4K, or I was reading 8K video, I guess that's a format you can shoot in now. If you've got the right camera, that eats up all kinds of data, and so this is who that card is aimed at. Okay, what's it going to cost? Don't know.
A lot.
But so okay, let's make a guess here, Eric. So what's this thing going to cost? Okay, so we don't know exactly because it hasn't been published yet, but we can speculate. So there's a 512 gigabyte version of this card from SanDisk, and right now on Amazon it's $346. And there's another 512 gigabyte card made by a competitor, PNY. That's $192 from Amazon for the exact same performance spec. It's a Class 10 card, et cetera, et cetera. All the same, a 95 megabyte per second write rate, up to, if you've got a device that could push that hard.
Sure.
Okay, so 346 for a 512 gig, 192 for a 512 gig, just different manufacturers. So speculation on my part, Eric, you can make your own guess, but my guess is the 1 terabyte card from SanDisk is going to start at a premium, but probably under 1K, and then it's going to drop in price over time like everything does. But let's say it comes on the market at $979.
Sure. I'm going to guess 1,100.
You think it's gonna? That's I don't think 1,000, because I think 1,000 is like a magical number. It's like a price barrier kind of thing. So I do think it's going to be more than twice of the 512 gig. That would price it at about 700 if it was merely twice. So I think they're going to charge a premium for it.
I just see it as this is double the storage in the same physical space. And therefore, it's going to be extremely more so expensive. But that's me. And soon we will see who is right and who is dead.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
I didn't know the stakes
sorry.
were so high.
Princess Bride snuck in there. Sorry.
Oh, Eric, you found another interesting story here. Now, I over the years have come to believe or understand that, forensic evidence is the thing. It's like, we took the hair sample and we proved that it was you and you did it with a lead pipe in the kitchen.
All from your hair sample.
Exactly. That kind of thing. Well, that's kind of the way Hollywood plays it up.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Crime drama shows and movies and stuff. Well, we got the DNA evidence, blah, blah, on it. And supposedly that's, irrefutable and, proven stuff. But I guess you found an article that something's out on that.
Yeah. So I titled this Enhance. Forensic evidence is far less scientific than you think. Wow, that really tickled your funny bone, huh?
So the enhance thing, it was a movie I just watched. I think I was with my son, and there was a picture. It was very fuzzy because there's just no pixels there, right? And the director says to the operator, enhance that. Boom! It was crystal clear. You could read letters and wrinkles on the face. It was awesome.
Because the operator didn't think to do that.
You just pressed a button, and it was like, you're right there. It's like all the pixels that were missing just magically appeared. It was fantastic.
Saw the killer's reflection in the cornea of the victim's eye. Yeah,
stuff.
That's what we're talking about. Sort of what we're talking about here. But basically, forensic evidence is far less scientific than we would be led to believe by the mass media, etc. And this was a report that the government, the U.S. federal government, the Justice Department undertook. And they found out that in looking over past cases, this is a quote from the article, in looking over past cases, the feds discovered that agents had systematically overstated the method's accuracy in court, including at least 35 death penalty cases. So they gave a few bullet list items here, hair analysis, and they said that a scientific agency should be analyzing these, not the Justice Department, essentially. Hair samples were not as reliable as you would expect when taking samples from a crime scene and trying to analyze.
And this is a sobering thing, because you said 35 death penalty cases. And so, in other words, the evidence being submitted could weigh into whether or not someone dies.
Yeah.
Because it's used as evidence to help a jury determine whether or not this person was guilty of the crime of which they are accused.
Right. Not just conviction. This is conviction for life sentences and death penalty sentences, which is a serious issue. So DNA analysis, this is the one that you honestly hear the most about these days. The study found that the basic technique is sound, but that human error is the biggest factor. And I'm reminded of a wrongful conviction that my wife and I discussed fairly recently, where the DNA analysis was performed by an apparently improperly trained and under-supervised technician, which led to the wrongful conviction and eventual pardon of an innocent man.
So with DNA analysis, I understand that the issue is contamination, where you can get...
It's contamination, and then if a sample is tested and looks reasonably similar, right? Because you're not looking at the entire genome. You're looking at core elements along the way, samples of the DNA, right? Different areas of the DNA, and comparing it to the suspect's DNA, basically. And if it matches here and it matches here, then okay, it's a reasonable match. But it's not foolproof, especially if, in this case, there was a lack of supervision and or training. So it was, not a geneticist that was doing the test necessarily. It was a technician.
So some noob does the test and
it gets
screws it up.
Right.
And basically the results are what are submitted, it sounds like, then to the court. And noob says, yep, it's a match. If someone who was more of a grown-up did it, they would have been, we're not so sure what this tells us.
And that's essentially what happened in the case that I'm speaking of. They reviewed it, I forget how much longer. I think it was a few years later, and found, no, the DNA that's not a match.
Surely tell me fingerprints, though, because I used to work for the state of New Hampshire, and there was a fingerprint database the Department of Safety was connected to at the FBI, so that must be solid. No, it's not, is it?
It's relatively solid, but the problem is confirmation bias. It's actually one of the most subject to confirmation bias. So if there's a lot of evidence that might indicate that the suspect is guilty and the fingerprint is pretty close, maybe not dead on exact, they're there may be confirmation bias there that says, well, look at this fingerprint, look at this fingerprint. Looks pretty much the same, and look at all this other evidence.
Yeah, because you want to believe, and the other evidence suggests that you should believe, then you believe, rather than taking the fingerprint comparison on its own merits.
Correct. And now the good news about fingerprints is that this is, it's largely moving into a computer analytic model where digital systems will identify and match up completely objectively.
83% match.
Right. It's not just, yes, that matches. It's not a human that hasn't been properly proficiency tested that says, yeah, that looks like that one to me. Okay, good. Now on to the next piece of evidence,
I think they were both from fingers.
If I had to guess, these are both humans. So on to firearm markings. I'm just going to read this one straight from
like
the article.
ballistics and stuff?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
the rifling and all this.
Yeah.
So to quote from the article, different guns are thought to leave distinctive marks on cartridges fired in them. PCAST finds that we only have, PCAST being the study that was performed, they find that we only have a single study rigorous enough to determine this technique's error rate, which may be as high as 1 in 46. And that's a far cry from practitioners' claims that the technique, quote, has near perfect accuracy. More studies are needed to define an accuracy rate that can then be used in testimony, and again, computerized image analysis may convert this from a subjective to an objective technique. So,
Well, I guess I could turn that on its head and say, well, there's a 45 out of 46% chance that it's right.
yeah, no, I mean, that's
But I think the greater point is, no, it isn't foolproof.
correct.
But
And
it's-
it's
yeah.
not as perfect as it's been projected.
Yes.
So the next one on the list is footwear analysis, and it turns out that it's really, really difficult to use footwear to identify a suspect. The one area that it could be useful would be when there are distinctive wear markings on the footwear. So, for example, the balls on my shoes wear in a certain pattern, right?
Yeah, that's freaky, man. What's wrong with your feet?
Well, part pterodactyl. And, so, those identifying characteristics are a possibility to analyze.
But if everybody's got a new pair of Chuck Taylors, everybody's got a new pair of Chuck Taylors. Right. You're not going to be able to see much of a meaningful distinction between those.
Yeah, so Scooby-Doo was full of it. That's all, they found the monster. It was his boot in the mud. And anyway, but those characteristics could be useful. But the problem here is that there really haven't been any studies to be of any use in determining the error rate and the sophistication of the techniques.
So you're just kind of going on faith as a juror or a judge or a courtroom that it's useful information. We don't, again, this goes back to the headline here. It's far less scientific than we would think.
Correct.
The science being we've tested and proven these techniques using the scientific method and validated that they're worthwhile tests.
We just don't know to what degree exactly. So finally, bite marks. This was the worst of all and pretty much was deemed completely subjective according to the studies that were done. And then overall, the PCAST report finds that most of the forensic techniques it looked at needed to be put on a more firm scientific foundation. Quoting from the article here, for subjective ones, this would involve testing trained practitioners to determine their error rate. For objective ones, we'd need studies that showed the underlying principles behind the technique actually apply to it. It was suggested that NIST should look into how to measure and certify error rates. And the study was not received by the FBI in a positive light. They responded that, quote, the FBI disagrees with many of the scientific assertions and conclusions of the report.
It's nice that they disagree, but do they disagree with science?
Not so much yet, anyway.
But if I'm the FBI, I get it, because what this does is it casts doubt on tests that I think the public at large, me included, assumed were pretty cut and dried evidence.
And thereby jurors.
And now if I'm a juror and forensic evidence is brought in, I am more inclined to be cautious about what I think about that evidence. It's not going to be a slam dunk conviction for me anymore. And if I'm the FBI and I want to have this person convicted and put behind bars or sentenced to death or whatever it might be, all of a sudden one of the bullets in my gun, so to speak, has been removed because there's doubt shed about the validity of those tests.
Right. And in the American justice system, for a criminal conviction, you convict based on the fact that it's been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Well, right, beyond a reasonable doubt.
Beyond
Yeah, yeah.
a reason,
Yeah, yeah.
reasonable doubt, yeah. So if this casts any doubt on the proceedings, then it's that much less impactful for the people using these techniques.
Or I guess another way to look at it would be forensic evidence becomes kind of the would you like fries with that? You know, if everything else stands to be convicting that person, and then you throw in the forensic evidence that also is against the person, it's kind of like, yeah, it all kind of adds up against you, buddy.
Right.
But if the only thing that was pointing to this person was some forensic test and there was no other evidence, you'd be like, yeah, no, I don't think so. I don't feel
Yeah.
very good about that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, Ethan, did you learn anything today?
So I learned something that is something more practical than scientific or nerdy, and it is simply this: Verizon Wireless ID is garbage. So the story is Verizon sent me text from their marketing department or whatever. Hey, would you like to try caller ID? Or no. It was basically you got
Enhanced?
caller ID
Oh.
for 30 days.
Okay.
Okay, great. So I got it. You know, and every once in a while I'd get a call. I don't get very many calls on my iPhone because I know it's a phone, but that's not what I use it for. Anyway, but I had a couple, and there was caller ID there, and I'm like, yeah, $2.99 a month, that's useful because for my business and stuff, it'd be kind of nice to know who's calling me in case they're not already in my address book. So I signed up, $3 a month. And basically, all the rest of the calls I got after that were either the ID was listed as unknown caller or
Restricted?
wireless caller.
Oh, wireless, yeah.
I haven't got the restricted one, no.
Yeah.
But and I haven't gotten I don't think I've gotten any hits that actually told me who the caller was. So I actually logged into my Verizon Wireless account and then just shut that service back off. It's garbage. Don't waste your money. Because however the system works, I'm sure that the service is working as intended. It's just there's not a very good mapping of phone numbers to names that you're actually getting a useful caller ID out of it.
Right.
It's a database problem, not a service problem. It is what it is.
Not worth $36 a year.
Definitely not. Not for me.
Yeah.
Not for me.
Okay.
Now, Eric, you got some content you like, right?
Yeah, this is free. Like, really, do whatever you want with it. Stock photos. And it's mostly landscapes and star fields and, picturesque photos. It's not like iStock photo or whatever where weird people wearing clown wigs and staring at computers or whatever. But, yeah, the URL for it is unsplash.com, and it really is. Everything there is royalty free. You don't even have to give credit. It's not attribution.
Yeah.
I found this because I work on websites a lot, and this site has come in handy many times. It sort of seems like it's a quote-unquote listen to my mixtape for photographers. So it's a way to look at this, look what I did, and get their name out there because their name is listed under the photo. And then you can click on their name and find other photos they've done. It's almost like, trying to get some exposure.
Sure.
But there are thousands and thousands of absolutely beautiful pictures in any resolution you can probably think of.
What about cat pictures?
There are cats.
Okay.
Maybe not lol cats, but there are cats. So unsplash.com, you should check it out if you're interested in finding a new wallpaper or image for a website you're working on or anything.
And that brings us to the end of Citizens of Tech this week. This was show number 47. Thanks a lot for listening. As we told you at the top of the show, we're going to be working on some more interviews, trying to find some super nerdy people, researchers, and so on, and dig into what they know. We'd love to hear from you, citizensoftech@gmail.com, the subreddit, Twitter @CitizensOfTech, etc. I'm Ethan at EC Banks. Eric is at Zutphen, Zutfen. And we hope to see you guys at citizensoftech.com, where you can become a Patreon sponsor. And we've got a few of you now. It seems like we got some more each week. And then an Amazon affiliate option is there for you as well. If you click through to the Amazon link, we get a few bucks for whatever you buy. So before you go buy that big screen TV, do that for us. We would appreciate that. And all we really do with that money is we don't make very much, but with the Patreon sponsorships and anything we get from Amazon, we just let other people know about the show with Reddit ads and Facebook ads, these kind of things, and let people know about Citizens of Tech, which we would appreciate from you as well if you would let your friends know. Until next week, we'll see you later.